We're going to talk to Elvin Lim. He is from the Faster Times. He's an assistant professor of government at Wesleyan, and he's author of The Anti-Intellectual Presidency. And he's written, Does Obama See a Silver Lining in Losing the House? Welcome to the show. We appreciate you coming on.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Great to have you here. And first, what would be the silver lining in losing the House?
Well, the silver lining would be presidents like to be able to blame Congress for failing to deliver on their promises. And there has been historical, separation of powers between the office holders of Article 1 and Article 2. And having both parties, one party control of both sections of American government have prevented Barack Obama the opportunity of blaming Congress, something that presidents like to do and do very well. And so the silver lining behind a Republican takeover in the House would be that Barack Obama would finally be able to say, look, it's not my fault, and it's the intransigent Congress that's causing the roadblock to my policy implementations.
Well, that certainly would be a profile in courage. But I hear you. I mean, that's the real world. Would you go as far, though, as saying that he looks forward to that? Or do you think, well, he would really dislike that, but at least he could play politics with it?
I think his position is probably somewhere in between, because he must be thinking now, wow, I've done all this. I've done healthcare reform. I've done financial deregulation, all of this, and I'm getting no credit whatsoever. I mean, is there any point in pursuing this? I mean, principles and ideals aside, maybe it's time to start getting credit, because I do have to, ask the American people if I'm going to get to keep my job in 2 years. And I'm thinking that he's probably wanting to be able to name a few accomplishments by 2012, and he may well want to be able to start blaming Congress and start working on foreign policy issues which allow executive unilateralism to get more done, rather than to rely on Congress, which has, even with 60 votes in the Senate, not been very helpful.
All right, I want to get to foreign policy in a second, but how would he get more credit in the next 2 years if the Republicans are in the majority? Because wouldn't he get absolutely nothing done? I mean, it's not like the Republicans would all of a sudden play ball with him.
Well, I mean, look at Bill Clinton, who was chastised in '94 and began to move to the center, and actually, people say, got more done because the overachieving expectations that came with his victory in '93, it's sort of the parallel to Barack Obama's high expectations to this presidency in 2008 and 2009, brought more hubris and more humility into the White House, and probably made them more willing to work with Republicans to pass legislation. In fact,
well, I mean, look, there's a couple of problems with that, though. First of all, the legislation that they passed was generally right-wing, and I don't mind it at the time. I think it was center-right, but that's where I was with it. But I'm telling you, it wasn't like he got his progressive agenda through. That was done, right? And they're Democrats. They will bow their heads to Republicans. There's no way they're going to get anything progressive through. So that's problem number one. And problem number two was actually that back then the Republicans were, believe it or not, I think more reasonable. Yeah, they'd shut down the government, et cetera, but they worked together to do welfare reform. I don't think these Republicans would work with Obama to do a damn thing.
Well, I think both sides are going to have to produce something, because if you think about it, both branches are going to blame the other. The president's going to say the Congress is intransigent, and the reverse. So I think Barack Obama can try to finesse something out of that, knowing full well that if Republicans get this sweep and, they claim to be, campaigning on something that is a direct alternative to Barack Obama, then they should also be able to produce something that can withstand a presidential veto.
Elvin, I hate to do it to you, but the Republicans aren't going to get anything done. They're not going to agree with Obama on anything unless it's exactly what they want. And then they get Obama to sign it. Yeah, Obama might do that, right? But they're not going to meet anybody halfway.
Well,
it's inconceivable.
I'll put it to you like that. Republicans they may be the party of no, but I'll say that Barack Obama is the institution of no. He has a presidential veto. That is a lot more no's than 60 votes in the Senate. And so if the Republicans want to play hardball, the great thing is this president, who hasn't really been using this issue, this veto threat, can really use it to finesse some kind of outcomes that he had either not been disposed to use.
Unless it's something that is 98% in favor of the Republicans, he's not going to get the opportunity. They're not going to pass the bill. They'll pass some things that are, completely Republican, and then I'm afraid he won't veto them. I mean, that's the problem, right? So, look, it all sounds like a disaster to me. And so the only silver lining, and it's a fair one politically, is that at the end he could turn around and go, ha ha, it was the Republicans who screwed you over the last 2 years and it wasn't me. But, that doesn't give me much hope for policy. But on the other hand, you make a very good point, I think, on foreign policy. Why do you think he'd switch over to doing more foreign policy in the next 2 years?
I think it's because no one really knows. I mean, not even, the liberals now are confident that they're going to be quick and demonstrable returns to healthcare reform and financial deregulation in the immediate future. I mean, I think we all agree now that the unemployment numbers are not going to change in the next couple of months in time for the November elections. So the president is looking for some kind of legacy accomplishment, and I think the easiest way to do that for him now is to turn to foreign policy. That would be the first observation. And the second thing is, I mean, think about it. We have to take the Tea Party movement seriously. They have been the fundamental force, I think, that has been impeding the Obama agenda. And I think there's actually one area where liberals and Tea Party libertarians can agree on, and that is both sides don't like war. Barack Obama's approval ratings are very high when it comes to commander-in-chief, but there is a majority now, about 51%, who are against the war in Afghanistan. And if the Tea Party people don't like spending money on big government, then surely they don't like spending money on big wars abroad either.
Well, I agree and disagree. So let me tell you the part that I disagree with. The Tea Party movement is legitimate in the sense that there are a lot of people who are disgruntled with the government. They're not entirely sure why, right? But they get the feeling that they're getting screwed and that the powerful are the ones that are cashing it. They're entirely right. The part, unfortunately, where they got misled is they got those same powerful people captured their own movement, the Tea Party movement, and misdirected them into protecting the largest corporations and the wealthiest people in the country. So at this point, unfortunately, the Tea Party movement is nearly useless when it could have done. So what are you going to do, work with them? The Koch brothers direct what they do, and the Koch brothers, all they want to do is less taxes for the rich, right? So in that sense, I don't think you're going to get anything fruitful out of the Tea Party unless you lift the veil and go, hey, you see how they misdirected you and misled you? Come to our side. Is Obama enough of a visionary to do that? I really doubt it. Before we get to the agreement, go ahead and address that part.
Okay, I just wanted to quickly note that in the short term, the Tea Party movement is probably a little bit more of a godsend to Democrats than people are admitting. I mean, look at Christine O'Donnell in Delaware, where we actually have a Tea Party candidate who is poll to poll, right? Compare that to Mike Castle, probably going to lose the election. But then when comparing Mike Castle with the mainstream Republican candidate, he's probably going to probably 9
That's a great
points behind.
point. That's a great point.
So the Tea Party movement is a representation of how energized the Republican electorate is, yes, but I don't think we're really at a place where we can judge the general election outcome just yet, precisely because independents and center-right moderates may well prefer a Democratic candidate come November than to pick a Tea Party candidate.
No, that's very fair. And, it's not, and Delaware, oh my God, if she wins, that's the masturbation lady we talked about before. And she's against all sorts of masturbation because it brings lust in the heart and other places apparently.
Right.
Okay, she would single-handedly lose the Delaware election for the Republican Party because Mike Castle's nearly guaranteed to win and she's nearly guaranteed a loss. So, yep. And then in Nevada, I mean, they picked the Tea Party Sharon Angle,
yep.
And they took an almost certain victory away from the Republicans, and now it's a toss-up, right?
Yep.
So I hear you on that. What I'm saying is, if they do win, it's not like they're going to work with Barack Obama on common goals. Except, you made a good point about the war, right? Now the war that's a little mixed bag, right? Because you have the people who fund these organizations. Some of them make money from war, some don't, some care, some don't. But real libertarians like Rand Paul, who I think is actually, agree or disagree, is far more genuine, are against the war. And so now and Republicans, since Obama's in charge of the Afghanistan war, will be politically inclined to turn on it, right? And if we have that movement combined with the progressive movement, yes, maybe we can end the war, not just in Iraq, but also in Afghanistan. So that would be something positive.
Yeah. Look, I think there's a window here. I mean, why did the Tea Party movement arise? Why did the libertarians become more powerful? Because the neocons were delegitimized, some routed after the Iraq War and the George Bush experiment. And so I think Democrats have a space here to generate a divide that naturally exists between the neoconservatives and the libertarians within a conservative movement. I'm not saying it's an easy one, an easy case to be made, but it can be made. There's no obvious reason why libertarians need to stand with neocons on war and not with progressives. So I think there's a space here. And another point I want to note is, look, Democrats played the anti-incumbency rhetoric in 2008. Republicans are now having their turn in 2010. I do want to note globally that this is costly to America because when Republicans come in, they are going to be a party of no. They are going to be impeding progress. At the end of the day, what's the independent going to be thinking, right? I think the funny thing about this anti-incumbency rhetoric that both sides use is that it's going to generate an even greater sort of vicious circle of a negative view towards government after 2010. And I think that's the real cost that all Americans on both sides will have to deal with.
Look, I agree with that as well. And I think if the Republicans do win, they'll blow themselves up because they'll go further and further to the right and really alienate independents. But I want to ask you one last question. We're talking to Elvin Lim, by the way. He's assistant professor of government at Wesleyan. He's also the author of The Anti-Intellectual Presidency, and he's written something in the Faster Times here that we're talking about. It's called Does Obama See a Silver Lining in Losing the House? So finally, how about health care reform? I saw David Axelrod on Meet the Press over the weekend, and Axelrod asked him, hey, how come you guys aren't talking about health care reform? And it looked like he wanted to literally run for the hills. Why do you think they're avoiding that issue?
Well, I think, look, I'll say this. You see talk of healthcare reform only where it's clearly blue and the Democratic incumbent is going to win. Where races are competitive, there is practically no talk on healthcare reform at all because it is fundamentally divisive. People disagree, and Democrats are running away from it. And I think on first blush, the answer has to be that healthcare reform has been increasingly unpopular as the summer has worn on, and it's no longer as popular as it was, in early 2009 and late 2008. And incumbents who are fighting for a re-election cannot afford to bring up an issue that is so divisive in the electorate.
Right, but let me do a quick follow-up on that because that's one school of thought. The other school of thought is, hey, you never know what might happen if you actually defended your policy, right? If you run for the hills, you know you're going to lose on it because the other side's going to use it and you're going to run. What if you said, hey, you know what, healthcare reform did work? Now, I don't think it did, don't get me wrong. But if you're running as a Democrat and you could say, hey, you know what, look, this is covered, et cetera, and there are good sides of the bill and they could brag about those sides. Do you think they might be better served if they actually fought for something they believed in rather than ran from it?
Well, I think, first of all, that the rhetoric is going to change as we get into the general election. Right now, as we are coming out of the primary season, we're finding that only the really, really inspired people who really care, right, the hardcore partisans come out for the primary elections. And as a result, things tend to get starker on either the left or the right. And you will find that this starkness tends to happen more on the right because they are anti-incumbents than on the left because people are already in. I think that things are going to be a little bit more moderate. Language is going to move more towards the center, and I think as a result, people will be more willing to touch healthcare as we move into the general election season. Right now, with the Republican primaries going on, with the Tea Party talking about it, it's just too explosive for candidates to bring up.
All right, we'll see if that develops. A very interesting conversation. Thank you so much for joining us. Really
Thanks for having me.
All right, we'll be right back.